Welcome to Simply Enough. This is Zachary and Elizabeth, and thanks for tuning in.
If you're liking our podcast, we'd love it if you'd share with your friends and family.
And then rate and review to raise our visibility and spread the message of enoughness.
We love you. And remember, you are simply enough.
Just as you are.
Period.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Simply Enough. I'm Mr. Zachary Leonard.
And I'm Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio. I effed up, everybody. You're going to hear why I effed up, everybody.
Okay, listeners and viewers, strap in. This is going to be an experience. So we just came out of what we thought was recording an episode. And
it was a good one, everybody.
It was a good one.
Damn it.
Now, as you'll hear, the content of the episode is essentially a continuation of what our most recent episode was, which was about our to-do lists and done is better than perfect. Are we who we say we are, which we're going to get into again. But we were really trying to lean into the theme of that. And both of us accepted that this episode was going to be in the lingo, a plop and drop, meaning there was going to be no editing. We were going to cut it and drop it as a live piece, essentially, right? Just unfiltered, unedited, done. And both of us got a little nervous, right? You got little butterflies excited because while we don't overly edit our stuff, there still is room for us to cut things out. If there's something that we said that we don't particularly like, we can do that in post-production and everything. So because this was a step for us, we both, we got a little bit of the butterflies. And poor, dear, sweet Dr. Ignacio, her job,
who is a tech idiot. I'm great with surgical instruments, but technology, okay, sorry. Go on. I'm taking full accountability. I effed up, everybody.
Is to press the record button.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to press the timer button because we try to shoot for about 35 minutes. Now, we were both just in our nervous, excited feels that we both didn't notice that Elizabeth didn't press the record button. So we get and if I may say why, because I've processed this in the past 5 minutes of my cursing myself. To your point, yes, my job is to hit record and your job is to, hit the timer. And because we're in different cities, like you are privy to the time and the time that we have left. But in my nervousness of, oh my gosh, this is going to be a live episode. We're not editing anything. I felt the need for myself to hit my own timer, which I normally don't. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm kicking myself. This is going to be a side lesson, at least for myself, a side lesson, which is, everybody has their role and everybody has their job. And when we all work to the best of our abilities of what we're supposed to do, that's how, we become more than the sum of some of our parts. So I should have stayed in my lane, everybody. But instead, because of my fear and perfectionism, I felt the need to also hit timer. And in doing so, hitting my own timer, I forgot to hit record. Confession over. But also, okay, I'm going to give you a little kudos because we are 5 hours apart. We record these oftentimes in very different times of our day. Dr. Ignacio often is running from surgery back to her house so that we can record. And she's so gracious and lovely that she doesn't want to impede my afternoon and evenings. So what that means is it means that she is hustling to get home earlier in the day so that I can get out of, my office and be on towards my evening. And because she is such a lovely friend in that regard, was very conscious of my time, right? And yes, you can talk about staying in your lane, and that could be another topic at another time. But truthfully, it also came from a perspective of being grateful for the time that we had and not wanting to overextend into my evening, et cetera. So just to give you a little bit of love there, I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm just going to push back a little bit there.
Okay, here's another episode, which is everybody find yourself a Zachary, because life is better with a Zachary. That kind of unconditional friend. I mean, really, that won't let you, feel badly about yourself. Everybody,
Put that on your to-do list to our episode last week. Put that on your to-do list, everybody. Find yourself a Zachary, because I got myself a good one.
Or
sorry,
Elizabeth.
go on.
Yes. You're the sweetest. So our hope, we were looking at life constraints. We were looking at what's going on in our respective lives. And we are proud of the fact that we drop an episode every Tuesday, or at least every week. Sometimes it might be on Wednesday, but at least every week our listeners and viewers can expect that there will be something from us. And it may be a new episode or maybe a re-release, but we are proud of that fact and we stand by it because that is who we are. Now, looking at life events and what's going on, and the fact that this is completely self-produced, self-edited, we don't outsource this to anybody, and it does take time. We were both looking at circumstances that might inhibit us from being able to drop a new episode this coming week. Mm-hmm. That didn't really sit well with both of us. So Dr. Ignacio said, what about this idea of leaning into done is better than perfect? It is what it is. Let's just record an episode. And I was like, you know what? I kind of like this. Let's just do this. This is simply enough in real time. Mm-hmm. And it made me think of a show that I enjoy is Will and Grace. And it made me think of Will and Grace. They did a live episode, and that live episode for the audience was special because it felt like we were part of something in real time that we were sharing with the performers, right? That we were with them on this journey. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if they were going to mess up or forget lines, or, if the set was going to break. We didn't know. But we were on board with the idea that it was real. It was authentic. It was them. Mm-hmm. And that's what we believe, right? This is who we strive to be. And so I love the idea that you threw at us, because I want our listeners and viewers to be part of it and to understand that we're works in progress as well, but we're also who we say we are.
Mm-hmm. And, not everything, despite social media, not everything is edited or curated or postable. And certainly the last 40 minutes that we spent recording a damn good episode is clearly not publishable because it wasn't recorded. So sorry, everybody. It really was. It's so funny because Zachary and I were actually really happy and proud of what we just thought I recorded. And I think one reason why we felt especially, good about the content of the last episode was not only because it was live and unedited, but honestly, because we felt like we survived it. Yeah. And we were so trepidatious going into it, like, oh my goodness, we're not going to edit this. Do we have to watch what we say? We're not going to be as articulate if ever we are. We're certainly not going to sound, as academic as we as academicians would like to sound, because, we're just kind of, flying off the cuff. So upon completion of it, it's so funny that I said, and guess what, everybody, look, we survived. And because we survived, it doesn't matter about the outcome. We survived it. You can too. So move and push past the fear, move and push past, whatever might be an obstacle in your way, because you can get over it and get through it. And wah, wah, wah. Here we are. Yes, we did survive. And yes, we did overcome, but we don't have anything to show for it. But then I sit back and think, and that's okay. Yeah. So that's actually part of it too, is okay, well, the outcome might not always be what we want something to be, but is there anything that we can gain from it or learn from it or grow from it? And I think, the past 40 minutes of non-recording, what we believe to be a great episode, was still of benefit, at least, even the knowledge that we got through it. Mm-hmm. So not even talking about the content and listeners and viewers, what you missed in our non-recording past 40 minutes, but just the fact that here we are again, round 2, and it's okay to have a round 2, or another trial. Mm-hmm. Life is an experiment, and everything that we do is just a mere data point. Mm-hmm. And from that data point, what's the next experiment?
Mm-hmm. And one of the themes out of recording 1.0 was it is what it is. And you said it like almost after the fact, as we were recognizing that we hadn't had the recording. You're like, okay, well, it is what it is. And then just this like opportunity to actually have to live into that, which we spent a little time kind of splitting up the complacent it is what it is versus the peace it is what it is. And I shared, there was a father of a student that I had who really hated that phrase. And he took it a step further by then saying, well, what can you do about it? And in our case, okay, we talked, we're like, okay, that means that we're not dropping a new episode. And that may still be the case. Like we may get into the middle of this and decide, nope, we're not releasing that one, but I don't think so. But because rather than trying to recreate the same episode and know that it wouldn't ever quite capture the magic of that episode, we threw out the idea, it is what it is. It is what it is. What can we do? Well, we can try again. We can try again differently, and we can see what happens. The other choice would have been, nope, we're just going to have a little friend time, and we'll figure out we don't drop an episode next week, or we do a re-release. But either way, there was peace because we had some choices. And you talked about the storm, and I'll let you try to, I'll let you talk about that in a second. But if you want to, but like I felt tremendous peace. Like, okay, it's okay. I'm not going to cry over the fact that we don't have the recording. I feel at tremendous peace that even if that didn't happen, we had the opportunity, we had the gift of talking through, and then we still had a tremendous gift of living what we just talked about, and then seeing, okay, what are we going to do about it? It is what it is. Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
I told you God has a sense of humor, right? So like divine intervention lesson, like, okay, Zachary and Elizabeth, you talk about, it is what it is, and acceptance and contentment versus complacency. So here you go. Here's a zinger. You didn't record for the past 40 minutes. That's God's sense of humor. But back to the it is what it is, and you're wanting me to allude to the storm that I did talk about in our prior non-recording. There is that saying that many people know in terms of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Well, another framing of insanity is wanting things to be different than as they are. And that's where it is what it is comes in, which is not from a place of complacency, but in accepting things as they are. It is what it is. Then that's how one can have peace with how things are, or how it is what it is. Doesn't mean you have to like it. Doesn't mean you have to be happy about it. Doesn't mean that's where you want to live. But in accepting it is what it is, then the fury of the storm can settle and all of the dust can settle, and you can come from the center of the storm feeling centered and at peace, so that you can kind of discern and distinguish through the debris or from the debris of the storm which direction to head, from then on. So it's not about, to the point of that father that you were talking about. It's important to recognize the what, but not to dwell on the what, but instead look towards the now what. So that's what we had to do as we are now recording this. The other thing, and this is going to be a tangent that's going to actually throw Zachary for a loop, because this is not what we talked about. Because I don't want to try to recreate gold as it was. I think what we just recorded, what can we take from there and maybe even create something new, is at the end of our non-recording, we talked about being, just as we are, it is what it is. And, we joked about the, no makeup, my hair is a mess right now, and it is what it is, that's, being real, being natural. And I couldn't help instantaneously feeling a bit triggered in terms of, this is like, I love you so much, Zachary, that I'm at a point of like, yeah, I don't need to put makeup on, and my hair is a mess because it was in a bun, from seeing patients, and I just let it all fall. And boy, the lengths I've gone through in my past of not accepting me for me, whether it's, looks or whatnot, and changing to please other people. And, how hard it is actually to not be one's self and then not be aligned with who one is. I can't help but think of my oh my God, this is going to be
That
unedited. I may regret this, especially because this is unedited. So we'll see if we even publish this. But so my ex-boyfriend in college, and I don't know who of my listeners and viewers are my college friends, because they're going to know who I'm talking about. But my ex-boyfriend from college, who I dated 3 out of the 4 years, and he was only my second boyfriend of my life. And I definitely was coming from a place of feeling less than, having never had a boyfriend, or having had one boyfriend. But prior to that, all through high school, I was the nerd, felt ugly, didn't have the prom date, would rather be in in the library, but I didn't want to be in the library. So I would create myself to be a certain way amongst the cheerleader friends, because I was a cheerleader, but I never really felt like a part of the group. I wasn't invited to the parties. I mean, I was definitely because I'm just watching this show right now, the Ugly Betty. I was definitely like trying to be a part of something. So anyway, I felt very unloved, unseen, unwanted. And so here I have this boyfriend in college, and he, was very active, and eventually became the student body president, and, very much, wanted to, saw himself really, truly, not only going to politics, but truly saw himself becoming the president of the United States. And he was debating whether or not to go this is, as a college student, whether or not to go the governor route or the senator route, which is statistically better. I mean, this is how he had his life planned. And I wanted to fit the mold. I wanted to be who he wanted me to be. And I remember as a senior in college, he telling me, that he'll allow me to fulfill my whim of being a doctor, so I can go to med school and get my degree. But then after I get my degree, there's no way that I'm allowed to practice, because he'll need a first lady, or prior to that, he'll need the political wife so as to advance. But he'll let me be fulfill my whim to get my med school degree, but then to make it up later, when he is president of the United States, he'll appoint me as head of the Red Cross, which, by the way, is not an appointed position. But what did I know as a senior in college back then? But when I recount that story now, I can say it with humor and laughter and recognize, just how off that is. But let me tell you, I swallowed that, hook, line, and sinker, in terms of, well, I'm got to be who he wants me to be. And, that will make me my being with him will validate myself. And so this kind of creation of who I thought he wanted me to be, and my acceptance of who he thought I wanted to be, who he wanted me to be, even though it was absolutely dissonant from who centrally and at my core I was made to be by God himself. That's what I believe. It's amazing what we can convince of ourselves in not accepting who we are as we are, or not seeing things as they are, and creating in our own mind our own narrative, so as not to accept it is what it is.
You started going down the story, and thank you so much for sharing this. saying, it's a bit of a tangent. And I don't think so. I think it's incredibly relevant because I hear you looking back on this, this time in your life and sharing your reflections on how you see yourself as if they're kind of existing in real time. Like it's almost like I can see you seeing all those moments, those conversations, those dialogues as if they're happening again. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, and it would be very much understandable. And I have done this, and I know others have, to get mad at yourself or to like be disappointed or have a negative reaction about it, and almost get to a point of like, well, it is what it is. And almost miss the opportunity to then say, okay, well, what can I do going forward? Mm-hmm. You clearly have learned and then taken that information and that shaped who you are now. So that is what it is. And you also said it beautifully, and I want to make sure that I call it out, and I don't want to forget, is you said that you don't have to like it, right? Finding peace doesn't necessarily mean that it's joy and happiness, right? Finding peace about it means that you can look at it objectively and not have that emotional response in the same way. But that also doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like, yay, that's wonderful, right? Mm-hmm. Which is what you just demonstrated for us. So you didn't actually go on a tangent at all. To me, and my understanding, you actually gave us an opportunity to see what happens when somebody can look back at a time in their life and maybe not necessarily, maybe that's a part of their history that they are like, okay, it is what it is, rather than, but what can I do about it now? It is what it is. It was just beautiful. It was really beautiful. So thank you. Those are my reflections about your story there.
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, I imagine, but don't let me project, in being of the queer community, did you ever feel that you had to not accept yourself as you are, not accept things as they are? It is what it is, and instead almost change yourself or reinvent in your mind either who you are, the circumstances in which you find yourself, and how disconcerting that was, dissonant was that for you? Okay, listeners, we got to be honest. We did one small edit.
We had reason.
Yeah, I Dr. Ignatios posed a really beautiful question, and in going to answer it, it just became overwhelmed in a story that I was sharing emotionally, and just for my own sake, I requested that we just stop and that we take it out. So yes, being fully honest and transparent, it was more just a personal request on my part that we just take that out. So that's the only edit, we promise.
And it wasn't about perfectionism. It was just, it was very sensitive. So
yeah. This story that I'm about to share, I have not told many people because, like your beautiful story, it reflects a time in our life when there's just a lot of emotions. So early on in my upbringing, I recognized that I was different. I didn't really know what that meant until I got into high school. And I was lovingly accepted into the theater community, which was great because I met so many wonderful people who I didn't even realize at the time were so affirming about, just differences and alternative lifestyles and interests and hair color and whatever. I mean, the theater community just by and large tends to be a community that's very opening and welcoming. Well, there was, this is around the time when AOL Instant Messenger first came out. Yeah, for those of you that remember. And I was talking with a high school friend who was not part of the theater community on Instant Messenger, AOL Instant Messenger, AIM. And I thought we were both being equally vulnerable about some of our own confusions or, identity exploration things and whatnot. Well, he was like, well, why don't I come over? So he came over and we parked and we ended up kissing in his car. Okay. The next day I got to school and found out that he was telling everyone that I was the F word. at school. Okay. Well, there was a student at my high school, all boys Catholic high school, who, I mean, by all accounts, was out very stereotypical TV show, what you would expect, like kind of nerdy, somewhat effeminate, like all the things that like Hollywood automatically goes to when they create kind of a gay character. Mm-hmm. Well, I made it my mission to pick on and be so mean to that person as some demonstration that I was not queer, right? Mm-hmm. That I'm going to be this like tough guy, blah, 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 right? Well, he was a member of the theater community, this person that I picked on, and actually somebody who was one of the first people to welcome me and be my friend. And here I was saying really hateful, awful things about him in front of these other guys who I don't give two shits about. Like, mm-hmm. I mean, really my theater community, those were my people, right? They were like the people that welcomed me from freshman year, and we did shows together and we had memories with. And this other guy was like somebody that I had an occasional class with. And I just, I didn't really like myself and the choices that I made. And looking back now, I can see like I was really shapeshifting. I was trying to put on this facade of being a tough guy, tough, straight, macho, hetero mm-hmm. dude who, you know, asserts his power over other people and right, like I'm a bro kind of thing. I mean, mm-hmm. it just grosses me out to even like kind of act that way. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you know, early on in my queer identity exploration, I worked really hard to try to convince others that I was anything but that, and then did things that were not in alignment with who I am. Like I'm a kind person. I'm a thoughtful person. I'm a caring person who takes care of his friends and likes when his friends take care of him. And I was doing none of those things. In fact, I was going to great lengths to do the opposite, because there was this part of me that I knew, you know, brought peer ridicule, etc. So yeah, that's what I thought of immediately when you talked about in your story, just what you did and what you went through to conform to somebody else's idea of who you should be or what you should be or the relationships that you were in, etc. So yeah.
And how shitty it feels, but we don't necessarily acknowledge it, but how shitty it feels when somewhere inside us, we know we're not being who we are or are meant to be, but because we are not liking, accepting, loving of who we naturally are, we will go the uncomfortable lengths of shape-shifting and trying to fit an archetype, if you will. I mean, been there, done that, what you're just talking about. And I know I've talked about it in previous episodes, but I don't regret much in life. But one thing I will say is I did not like who I became by the end of my orthopedic surgery residency. Right, again, only female, you know, all males, and ortho in particular is very, you know, alpha male. And though I did have lovely supporters within the residency program, still there was this very alone, alienating feeling of being not only, you know, the only female, but I mean, I'm 5'1". I'm happy. I was a cheerleader. I like to laugh. I'm, you know, little Miss Positivity. That got a little bit beaten out of myself, and I'm not going to blame, you know, just others in my environment. I beat it out of myself. I chose to fit a certain mold that I thought was expected of me. Maybe for some it was expected of me, but I'll also say that there are many others that like didn't need me to be, the big bitch in this little body, right? Like, but I assumed that and thought that that's how I was supposed to be. And that was especially when I was the academic senior resident. So that was my fourth year of my 5-year residency. And that is where I had learned to model like machismo and hard ass hazing, military teach by shaming kind of persona. And I was so miserable that I nearly broke by my chief year, which is my 5th year. And my 5th year, when I had med students, I just told myself, I do not like the bitchy side of me. And that's where I was able to kind of lighten up a little bit, back to be a little fraction of what I used to be, but I still even wasn't my whole natural self. But at least then my chief year and my rapport with students was so much more enjoyable and honestly just easier because I wasn't trying or efforting to be anybody or anything else than who I was. And then, like I talked about in previous episodes, then for my fellowship where, and again, it's not about location. It was just my point and season in life where I then, did my sports medicine fellowship in LA, where I said, okay, well, nobody knows who or what I was for the past 5 years. So I'm just going to go back to being like the cheerleader me that I was. Yeah. Gosh, that was so much more fun and so much easier. But yeah, that kind of bullying, hazing that you talk about, that was me. And I know exactly from where you speak, because I was that as well. It's so much harder, so much more work, so much more effort to shapeshift as opposed to just accepting, valuing, loving who you naturally are meant to be.
Absolutely. And it's exhausting. And that like, what am I doing moment, is literally can be as pervasive as years in residency, but it also can be the episode that we talked about where I was like literally putting the paper towels under my armpits because I have sweat marks under my armpits. Like that's me, that's who I am, and you talked about, the waist trainer,
otherwise known as a effing corset, everybody.
Where we just look at ourselves and we're like, what am I doing? This is so far away from who I am. And it literally is exhausting. It was exhausting for you in that car to try to get that thing on. It was exhausting for me to figure out where the bathroom was so I could like put the paper towels in there and without the shirt, and then the paper towels disappeared and everything. But those are humorous examples of real life ones that we just talked about, where it affects our relationships with people, and more importantly, that it affects our relationship with ourselves. And the guy that and Chris, if you ever listen to this, please know that I still am incredibly sorry. He gave me a tremendous gift because as it's happening, I'm literally saying to him, "I'm sorry," and he goes, "No, the only person you need to say sorry to is yourself." And he was so right, because I was not living who I was. And that was the fractured relationship. It was not my relationship with him, which certainly was fractured. The true fracture that was happening was inside. And then the consequence was my relationship with him. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely
that came out right?
Yes, absolutely. On a totally lighter note, for those that are like, y'all are getting too heavy and I'm not getting it. Yeah. I'm just, first of all, perhaps this isn't the episode. Perhaps this isn't the podcast for you if we are getting too heavy, because this is what we do pretty much every episode. But on a lighter note, I can't help but think of you wanting to say sorry to Chris, and I wanting to thank and celebrate whoever brought back regular size jeans. And whoever brought back regular size jeans, so that, death to the skinny jean, I just want to thank, because boy, regular size jeans nowadays, what do they call the straight leg and the wide leg and the high rise? Like, I just feel so much more natural and comfortable and at ease. Whereas wearing the skinny jeans and how that was a la mode and everybody was in skinny jeans, I couldn't be the only one on this earth that felt uncomfortable in skinny jeans and was like, why am I wearing this? Or I'm looking at myself right now as we're recording, and I'm like looking at my part. And it's so funny because I have dear friends who have teased me that like, my part is ever so slightly right of center, and the center part is very in, and the side part is like, oh my God, so like 2010s. And I'm like, I've tried to like create the center part, and like, it's just not me. First of all, my natural part is this, it's right of center. This is just where the part falls. And then secondly, the center part, I don't care how in it is, just like the skinny jeans. I don't care if it ever comes back again. I'm never going to wear skinny jeans ever again, even if it's like the most fashionable thing, because it's just not me and it's not flattering to me. So the center part, everybody's going to like switch to a video now who's never seen me and my face. I have my Filipino nose, and I'm just saying a center part is not attractive, and it's just not natural. That's not where my natural part is. So you know what? I'm just going to go with what's natural, which is my part that is right of center. I'm going to go with what's natural, which is I feel comfortable in looser jeans, and to hell with it.
Yeah. It is.
Sorry, that's my tirade about accepting things, as they are, accepting, loving, valuing, how the good Lord made you.
Well, and okay, if I can use this to wrap us up, you are so right, because thinking about, we started this episode acknowledging that we had done another episode that we had thought we had recorded, right? We could have spent the next however much time trying to recreate that. That would have been exhausting. It would have been tiring, and it would have been inauthentic, because we were trying to be something that was not what it is, which is we're now live with each other in this moment here, and to try to make it something else, try to make it what it was, or make it something different, was a kind of shape shifting that would not work for us. And here, just in this episode alone, we lived by that, right? And we shared some heavy stories and some lighter stories. I would like to thank the person that brought back looser fitting jeans, because I have thicker thighs and a booty, and they don't fit in skinny jeans. And if they do, it's not a good look, right? They're like drumsticks. Like, that's not an attractive look on a 5'9" male, right? Not a good idea. So I also want to thank the person that brought back regular like jeans and not carpenter jeans where you could fit 3 of me in there, because then that makes me look like I'm really frumpy.
But for those listeners and viewers who like the carpenter jeans, you
good
go
for you.
It. You flaunt it.
Yes.
Because
remember, you are not just simply enough.
You are more than enough. And here's the point. Just as you are. Period. Mwah.